Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, with growing international pressure, Israel vows no power on earth can stop us from defending ourselves. Decades of UNRWA education for hatred and murder revealed in a new film. Son of a Holocaust survivor, who was also the father of a Hamas hostage, shares his hope for the future. And could these red heifers be the key to rebuilding the Third Temple? All this and more on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The International Court of Justice demanded Israel halt its military operations in Rafah, saying it was not convinced that the evacuation efforts undertaken by Israel were sufficient to mitigate danger to the Palestinians. Israel, which is not a member of the court, had anticipated the court's ruling and early avowed that no power on earth would stop it from protecting its citizens and going after Hamas. The court also demanded that Israel provide access to the Gaza Strip to any investigative organization that investigates charges of genocide. South Africa accused Israel of genocide for the war in Gaza months ago. Before the court issues its ruling, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant declared the Rafah operation will intensify.
We are strengthening our effort in Rafah. This operation will increase.
Since Israel is no signatory of the court, it has no jurisdiction over the Jewish state, but the ruling may increase international pressure on its military operations against Hamas. The petition by South Africa alleges Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. While the Israeli Defense Forces are still pushing ahead in Rafah, other European nations, including Belgium, are considering following the lead of Norway, Spain, and Ireland and recognizing a Palestinian state. Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman asked why such a state should be recognized now, after October 7th.
They continue with their policy of pay for slay. They continue to educate their children to hate. They still haven't held an election in 19 years. But it's worse than that. Fatah terrorists proudly participated in the October 7th massacre.
Today, the IDF announced they've recovered 3 more bodies of hostages. The military says they were murdered by Hamas on October 7th and taken into Gaza. And more evidence of Hamas atrocities are coming to light. After a report by the London Daily Mail, the IDF released the interrogation of a father and son who participated in the October 7th massacre. The son described a family orgy of rape and murder on a woman about 30 years old. It's because of these kind of atrocities that Israel says Hamas must be destroyed. But Hamas is not the only enemy Israel is facing. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toured northern Israel, an area under nearly daily attack from Hezbollah since day one after October 7th. Nearly 100,000 Israelis remain away from their homes because of the fighting.
We have detailed, important, even surprising plans, but I do not share these plans with the enemy. These plans are designed to do 2 things. First, restore security to the north, and second, return the residents safely to their homes.
At the Israeli embassy in Washington Thursday night, House Speaker Mike Johnson addressed the 76th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel. He announced Netanyahu will soon address a joint session of Congress. At the event, the embassy set aside chairs for each of the hostages kidnapped on October 7th. And Johnson promised the darkness of that day will not prevail.
Sadly, since the massacre of October 7th, we have seen an alarming increase in the dark forces of anti-Semitism and terror and oppression. Let me say this as clearly as we can. We will not and we cannot allow the darkness to prevail. We will not do it.
The Israeli War Cabinet decided to move ahead with talks for the release of the hostages after Israelis witnessed footage on national TV from October 7th of the kidnapping of 5 female soldiers. The 3-minute video shows the young women terrified, bullied, and bloodied. One terrorist boasted, "These are women who can get pregnant." Another said, "You dogs, we will step on you," and threatened to shoot them all. They were kept in a room and then taken by jeep into Gaza. The families of the soldiers agreed to release the heart-wrenching video to expose the horrors of what Hamas did on that day and to push for their freedom. We talked to member of Knesset Sharon Haskell about her reaction to the video and the announcement this week by Spain, Ireland, and Norway on their plan to recognize a Palestinian state.
We are all completely heartbroken. These are our sisters, our daughters, our friends. Women are being used as a tool of terror, as weaponizing violence against women. And unfortunately, Hamas and other leaders says that they will do it again and again and again if necessary. You see their bodies being, thrown around. We need to bring them back home now. And the only way is military force on Hamas.
Tell about your reaction to the declaration yesterday of Norway, Spain, and Ireland to a Palestinian state.
I think it's absolutely appalling. This is part of the propaganda that's actually, it's feeding the beast of radical Islam. There are very dangerous enemy of the free world who are looking on what is happening in the international community. And those countries are in support of literally terrorism. They want to reward terrorism. The hypocrisy, especially of Spain, is absolutely appalling. They have a few people and countries, literally territories, who are in dire wish of independency. And they look to declare an independent state overseas while they can't even deal with their own internal issues.
What impact could this have on Israel and, say, the United Nations, the Security Council?
The international community doesn't really understand what's at stake. The war that Israel is fighting now, this is not just a war between Israel and Hamas. This is the Iranian war. This is a war of radical Islam trying to eliminate the free world, to eliminate our traditions, the way that we live, and in our values. And so those international organizations, those international bodies, they are a complete failure in anything to do in protecting and defending real atrocities that are happening.
Coming up, UNRWA, decades of United Nations educating Palestinians for violence and murder, revealed in a new film. For decades, UNRWA has been educating Palestinian children for hatred and murder through their school curriculum and summer camps. I spoke with David Bedeen about a new film he has on his work on the subject over the last 25 years. David Bedeen with IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Thanks for joining us. You have a film right now that you have compiled over 25 years into 15 minutes. Tell us about the film.
We take the best, or you might want to call it the worst, of Arab incitement in the UNRWA refugee camps and put it out there for people to see. If you say to someone, I want to show you 25 movies, they're not going to respond. But when you say, I want to show you a pattern of the education for violence, education for murder, which has taken place over a period of that we've been filming all these years, that people understand. Now we're showing mothers, teachers, counselors who are advising UNRWA children to go out there and kill and be killed. Now that's a pattern which, at a time when Israel and the whole world is reevaluating what they're going to do with the refugee camps. What about their education? And no one's addressing their education, which is what we're trying to do. They're planning their summer camps again this summer. We show that every summer camp that we filmed, and we're talking about quite a few of them, the children are being trained to kill with automatic weapons without any hesitation from the donor countries. 135 nations are now flowing their money into Gaza and into the UNRWA camps without any requirements whatsoever. They're talking about humanitarian supplies, they're talking about education. Well, what about what's in there? Yeah. They have a new school book which has been revised and revamped, which shows a murderer as a role model. And they just blink at it. That's it.
So if people want to see that, they can go to IsraelBehindTheNews.com.
Absolutely. We know that the Nazis try to cover this thing up. The Arabs aren't covering them at all. They don't cover it up. It's all transparent. The money isn't transparent, but the content is transparent, and people miss it.
And what kind of reaction have you had so far?
Just at the beginning, and there's a lot of curiosity in the diplomatic community here in Jerusalem. A lot of curiosity in terms of what we have, and they know that it's out there, it's public, and they've been trying to. I mean, whereas the Arabs aren't trying to cover it up, the diplomats are because they're paying for it. $1.6 billion that can't be accounted for, money that was meant for medical supplies, which disappears, amongst other things.
Well, I'm sure some of that has gone into those tunnels inside Gaza.
10 years ago, we put out a study on how the tunnels were being built, supposedly for hospital expansion, and we showed then that the money for the hospitals was going into the tunnels. And that's, to me, something that was 10 years ago. We documented it then, and look at the results. How many people were killed as a result of that?
And how far have you seen this ideology spread? I mean, we see this on college campuses. There are pro-Hamas demonstrators now in college campuses around.
Every pro-Hamas demonstrator in a Western democracy can be arrested if he sneezes towards Hamas. There are laws. It's called the FTO law, the Foreign Terrorist Organization law, which is in the United States, in Canada, in the UK. If you so much as verbalize support for Hamas, you can be arrested tomorrow morning. Now, they went through the process with the PLO becoming kosher and acceptable. They never went through that process, and there's a lot of people are going to pay quite a price for that. Very serious. And the spread of Hamas propaganda, Hamas support. There's a lot of people who are going to be held accountable for that.
Yeah. When people see this film, David, what's your takeaway? What do you want people to take away from it?
I want them to talk to their elected representatives in every parliament. How can you be giving money to this entity without checking what's going on? Why are you not asking questions about education? Education for war, education for violence, brainwashing children to kill. Why aren't you asking about that? That's the issue. And this can be done. Back in 1991, there was something called the RWG, the Refugee Working Group, which was formed of the donor countries, but it was left quiet because the Oslo process came through. The Oslo peace process replaced it. Now there's no excuse. In the last 6 months, 40 UNRWA schools were discovered to have every level of weapon there. Arsenals. What about a weapons check in every UNRWA school? Why isn't that happening? Why isn't there no demand being made of all the donor countries? We're talking about 67 donor countries, 33 relief agencies, and 400 Israeli corporations involved in UNRWA.
Well, David, you've been a voice crying in the wilderness for this and a pioneer in exposing this. Thanks so much for being with us.
Pleasure that you can have us as a voice of truth in the Middle East. Thank you.
Up next, the son of a Holocaust survivor, now the father of a Hamas hostage, shares his story. The attack on October 7th touches people of Israel in so many different ways, specifically the impact on family members of hostages. Shai Venkert, the son of a Holocaust survivor, is now the father of a Hamas hostage. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story.
Omer Venkert's picture is all around his hometown of Gadara. Hamas captured the 22-year-old Omer from the Nova Music Festival, and he remains in captivity.
He's a very handsome guy. He likes music. He's a restaurant manager. He likes food. He's supposed to start study about culinary food in November, but he's still captive in Gaza.
CBN News talked with Omer's father, Shai, recently at the family's home.
Omer went to the Nova Fest with Kim Dumpty. She is a friend of him, youth friend. They went to the Nova at the morning, 5:30 a.m. before sunrise, and there was missiles around, and they went to the bomb shelter. At the bomb shelter, it's okay for missiles, but it's not okay for hand grenades that are throwing inside. And for gun shooting, some of them went outside. All the people that went outside were shooting dead. Also, unfortunately, Kim Dumpty, she died. She was killed.
Omer left the bomb shelter and was taken captive by Hamas.
I saw Omer on the video. He was on the Toyota SUV, only with underwear, handcuffed. They cursing him, they beating him, and they pointing guns on him. And he went inside Gaza Strip, and at the end of the video there is a building. And I saw the building, I did a capture, and I tried to find it by Google Maps. And I found this area, it's next to Borej.
Following the release of certain hostages in November, Shai talked with some who had been with Omer in captivity.
The Thai guys, we met them at the hospital. Everyone is going to the hospital after the captivity, so we went there with a picture with Omer's photo on the picture, and immediately when we came in, they told me, oh yes, Samuel. He always sang the song, Eze Yom Haya Li Samuel. It's a happy song, an optimistic song. They said he's quite okay mentally. Omer has a colitis disease, and this is a chronic disease of the stomach.
Shai's mother, Omer's grandmother, is a Holocaust survivor.
My mother is a very strong woman, but it's very hard for her. This is the first grandson. She was waiting for him, and she didn't believe that Holocaust can come again, because always they told them, never again. And on the 7th of October, it was a second Holocaust, but the terrifying is it happened in Israel, in the state of Israel. So she didn't believe that she can suffer more than she suffered at the Holocaust.
The most difficult thing for his grandmother is that she can't see him.
She can't talk to him. At the ghetto, there were five years. They can move, they can walk, they can do something, but not as the captivity of the Hamas.
What gives you strength? What gives you hope?
I feel strength because I believe that Omer is alive. I know he's alive. And I have one mission now in my life, to bring Omer back. So I have to be strong. I have 2 more kids. I have to be strong also for them. And we're doing interviews, we're doing meetings, we are going abroad, and we're doing a lot of things to take Omer out and to take all the hostages out.
The mission took him to the U.S., where Shai and his wife Neva visited the UN Security Council, and Neva visited Columbia University.
We got a supporter response. Also for the UN, there was a lot of people with the photos of the hostages in the middle of New York, next to the UN, also at the Columbia University. People need to hear the story to spread the word around. I want the world to believe how happy I'm going to be, my wife and my family, when Omer is coming back. So if all the world will believe it, it probably can be faster than we want to be. On the 7th of October, we met the enemy of the humanity. It's not enemy about only Jews, because in Colombia they are not attacking only Jews, they are attacking all civilians, they are pro-Palestinians. And we met the anger of the Hamas. This is worst thing, and the world needs to know the act Hamas did.
Shai noted that Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, uprooting thousands as part of the disengagement, and Palestinians have been self-governed since then.
18 years, there is no soldier at the Gaza Strip. They have their own land to build the houses. They got money from Qatar, from US, from everywhere. They build the metro just to eliminate us.
Israel celebrated its 76th birthday recently, and despite the war, Shai says he's confident about the future.
Israel is a very strong country. We are going to come and to be together and to be stronger than now. Now we are in a terrible, difficult situation, but Israel is tough, it's strong, and we are going to get out of it.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Gadara, Israel.
Still ahead, red heifers in Israel. Could they be the key to rebuilding the Third Temple? The ashes of a perfect red heifer were necessary to purify the priests that served in the Jewish temple. Now, after 2,000 years, 5 red heifers have been brought to Israel to see if any qualify as a prelude to the rebuilding of the Third Temple. I spoke with Byron Stinson about the cows. Byron Stinson with B'nai Israel, thanks so much for joining us. You helped bring over 5 red heifers last year. Tell us what the status is of the red heifers.
Well, Chris, today the red heifers at ancient Shiloh, they're very healthy, they're beautiful. It's open to the public. If you come over here and go to ancient Shiloh, you'll be able to see them and pick up more information there. So we'll see what the plan of the Lord is when the door would open, if one of these cows might be that part of that ceremony of purification.
What is the ceremony and why is it so important?
So the ceremony is not a ceremony for me as a believer in Yeshua, but it's so important. The Jewish people, they're tasked with things like keep the Torah for the world. They're tasked with keep the Sabbath for the world. They're tasked with these things, and because they've done it, then the world is blessed by those things because it's the law of God. It's the pattern that God gave us. So the purpose of the ceremony is a ceremony of purification where you burn the cow and you take a little bit of ash into thousands of gallons, even millions of gallons of pure living water, and everything is sprinkled on. It becomes purified. And we even see this in Ezekiel 36. The Lord says when he brings his people back to this very land, then he's going to be like he sprinkles them with pure water, and life will come from that, understanding, and things will happen because of our fathers of faith following through with their required steps that they're doing.
And what's the timetable look like right now?
So we want to do it as soon as possible, but the rabbis would like to do this ceremony as soon as there is consensus. We want the ceremony to be seen by the world, so we're actually working with groups that can stream this out to the entire world when it does happen. So there's a lot of things happening moving forward, and like I say, we'd like to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah. How do you address the objection some people have, Christians mainly, that this is going to set up a possible third temple, which is going to be where the Antichrist is coming?
Absolutely. So if a Christian will go to the book of Micah in the chapter 4 and just start reading, it says, in the last day there will be a temple and people will come from all over the earth to see this temple of God. The secret is it's a temple of God. The reason the Antichrist comes, and he will come, is to stop those sacrifices. And I don't think he would stop them if they weren't powerful and if they weren't doing something for the world that was positive, because the Antichrist is evil. So he comes to stop those sacrifices and does that. So what the Jews would like to see is the coming of the Messiah. And there is no way that the Messiah can come until there's a temple and then the Antichrist revealed. Then we have 3.5 years, and then we see Messiah come, is the way I read it. So it has to happen. This is the pattern. This is what's written. And so we're just stepping in, allowing God to use our hearts and our feet, and not trying to make anything happen, just in this willing to work for the Lord because he's worthy. And so that's what's going on.
Final question, Byron. If these are end-time days, end-time events, how should Christians be prepared?
So we do know that there will become a hard time. Many theologians will say that the Christians won't be here, so you don't have to worry about that. You're just going to be raptured out of here before there's any tribulation. The Word of God in Mark 13, Jesus speaking and teaching says the final sign will be when there's persecution upon God's people. So I don't believe we'll be out of here. I think we'll be here for that tribulation. Now's the time to think about it. Now's the time to study on it and look what's going to happen. So we know there'll come a mark of the beast. Don't take it. Know that you can last 3.5 years during that time of tribulation when you can't buy and sell. God will make a way. He made a way for Paul in the dungeons and prisons of Rome so that he could do the most wonderful work ever shared with the world during that time. And he's going to use us as voices in the nations to bring salvation to millions, billions all over the earth. So prepare yourself, read your Bible, get ready. It's coming. You can't get around it. And let's trust Jesus in the middle of it.
For such a time as this, Byron, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. And please remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the rescue of all the hostages. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
Alpha.